Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
going to be a problem. Good morning, colleagues. This is our first GIC meeting for the month of May, and it's a privilege to be the deputy mayor. I want to thank Angela McGregor and Jessica Versace for helping us out today, and I see that we have quorum. So a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during the committee meeting. And we do have quorum. Okay, approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor. There are added communications item 5.2, correspondence respecting item 8.3, Hamilton Region Decarbonization Hub CM22013A, PED 22176A, from the following individuals: Larissa Fenn, Vice President, Corporate Affairs, Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority; Jeffrey Cowan, President and CEO, and David Inkley, Vice President, Hamilton Community Enterprises; Kate Flynn, General Manager, Center for Climate Change Management at Mohawk College; Jeffrey Napper, General Manager, Hamilton Industrial Environmental Association; and Greg Dunnett, President and CEO, Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, all with a recommendation to be received and referred to consideration of item 8.3. We have correspondence item 5.3 from Greg Dunnett, President and CEO, Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, respecting 8.2, Better Homes Hamilton Home Energy Retrofit Program, PED 23106, with a recommendation to be received and referred to consideration of item 8.2. We have added delegation requests. 6.1 are delegation requests respecting 8.2, Better Homes Hamilton Home Energy Retrofit Program, from Ian Borsick, Environment Hamilton, in person; Michelle Diplock, West End Home Builders Association, virtually; and C, Zoe Green, Bay Area Climate Change Council, virtually. They're all for today's meeting. And added delegation requests 6.2, which are delegation requests respecting item 8.3, the Hamilton Region Decarbonization Hub, from the following individuals: Ian Borsick, Environment Hamilton, in person; Jeffrey Cowan, Hamilton Community Enterprises, which is a pre-recorded delegation; and David Carson, Hamilton 350, which is also a pre-recorded delegation, also all for today's meeting. The presentations have been added for all staff presentations, and there is a change to the amendments to the outstanding business list. Under item 13.1B, the items requiring a new due date, OBL item U, which is the annual report on the operations of the Hamilton Urban Precinct Group LP. That item has been withdrawn, as staff are still aiming at a July 10th due date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And may I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Clark and Councillor Francis. And you will e-vote, please. Is everybody voting? Okay. Thank you, and it passes. Declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest? I see none. For approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. 4.1, April 19, 2023. 4.2, April 24, 2023, and that was a special meeting. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes? Councillor Spadafora, Councillor Danko, thank you.
Sorry, through the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Spadafora can't move them because he wasn't in attendance at the second one.
Okay, I'm sorry. Councillor Taddison then, thank you.
Nice try.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor. Thank you, and it passes, so we'll go on to 5, communication. May I please have a mover and a seconder on the communication items? Is there any discussion on the, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, first? Okay, there's no discussion, so we'll have Councillor Jackson, I do not want to miss you.
Well, I think that might be a harbinger for the rest of the day. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pauls, much appreciated. Deputy Mayor Pauls, one of the resignations, Jana Malseed, resigning from the Arts Advisory Commission, a constituent of mine, but much more importantly, has served the Arts Advisory Commission for many years, has been a force in terms of promoting music amongst students. She's been an executive member of the Musicians Guild Union in our city. Just a tremendous bright light, great advocate, intellectual, and insisted on wanting to help during the pandemic. And with the mayor's task force on economic recovery, Deputy Mayor Pauls, she was very proud to be appointed to that, especially in the area of helping to keep the arts afloat during the horrible time of the COVID-19 virus. It's with a deep regret that I will accept her resignation, but I wanted to put it on the record how much I've appreciated her volunteer commitment to the Arts Advisory Commission and especially music in our city. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pauls.
And thank you, Councillor Jackson. Okay, so we will have an e-vote then?
Councillor Danko.
Oh, Councillor Danko.
Thank you. Similar to Councillor Jackson, I served on the Arts Advisory Commission last term, and just recognizing the work that Annette Paidement, Jana Malseed, and Monica Koilik provided in their role on the Arts Advisory Commission. It was a very challenging time for people working in the arts through the lockdowns, through the COVID-19 pandemic, and just their enthusiasm as professional working artists and trying to improve the community, improve the scene, and make life better for artists and residents throughout Hamilton. It was very inspirational, and just wanted to formally thank them, all three of them, for their service, and I'm looking forward to how they continue to contribute in other ways. Thank you.
And thank you. And it is important to recognize them, people that help our community to make Hamilton a best place to live. So thank you for that, both councillors. Okay, so we're going to go for the vote then.
Sorry, I didn't catch the mover and seconder, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Jackson and Councillor Danko then, please.
Thank you.
And it carried. Thank you. We're going to delegation requests 6.1 and 6.2. And please, can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the delegation request? Councillor Cesar and Councillor Beatty, thank you. And we will go to a vote. And it carries. Thank you. We're at delegation. And before we begin our delegation, from today's members are reminded that the questions of the delegations are for clarification purpose only. They're not to be debated. 7.1, David Brandon, respecting an approach that the city could adopt to respond to and encourage climate-sensitive demonstration projects. Approved April 5th, 2023. And he's in person. Welcome, David. Thank you. And David, you have 5 minutes. And you will hear a bell, and you still have 1 minute left after that. So don't stop when you hear the bell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go
Deputy
ahead.
Mayor, members of the committee, thank you. I recognize some of you. Good to be here. I'm going to read this. My name is David Braden. The primary purpose of this presentation is to make the process of obtaining permits far easier when seeking to making houses more climate friendly. Having been in the business of building houses for 35 years, I make the following comments. I use the phrases climate sensitive, climate change, and energy efficient interchangeably on purpose because it stresses the focus on the target, which is energy. While we have our hands full in trying to respond urgently and effectively to the climate change crisis, we cannot avoid keeping the related aspect of affordable housing on the radar. Much of the existing housing stock, as well as what we build in the near future, will be with us for decades. As far as the climate is concerned, they are all, with the fewest of exceptions, obsolete, as are many of the houses yet to be built. To modify these houses to meet the climate standards requires permission from this city. Presently, the city relies on a small group of builder developers to supply low-density, market-priced housing. Their corporate goals do not include affordable or climate-appropriate housing. The city must be more inclusive and broaden the scope of potential builders to include the 100,000 or so homeowners who own probably 60% of the residential lands, as well as community-minded groups like service clubs. The present permitting process is understandably geared to the major participants. It is professional, impersonal, rigid, expensive, and time-consuming. To the general public, the process is bureaucratic, complicated, and intimidating. To engage the non-typical, non-familiar potential builders, we need a process which responds to their lack of experience. It should be friendly, helpful, supportive, inexpensive, and quick. The modification to individual homes will only be accomplished when owners know what to do, get permission, and follow through with action. To support this realization, the city, having publicly declared a climate emergency, needs to assure the public that it is serious about action. The emphasis here is on action to solve the climate emergency. Secondly, it should provide in-house consultants or climate action ambassadors at all planning and building department counters to assist all customers who might be interested in affordable and/or energy-efficient housing. These positions can be filled from behind-the-scenes backroom staff who would value the professional experience of working on the front lines. Also, qualified university/community college students seeking a meaningful co-op placement could fulfill this need. Since the provision of affordable housing and energy-efficient housing can both be considered a public good, the city can be justified in applying flexibility in interpreting planning regulations beyond those that relate to safety and longevity. The city controls development charges, planning fees, building permit fees, and the associated taxes on those fees. In combination with the federal government, there is funding to provide incentives for both initiatives. Making the permit process more convenient and enticing can only improve our efforts to act quickly and appropriately. Originally, I intended to come to you to explain how to make houses more sensitive to climate change, and that's where I have expertise.
Mr. Breton, I hate to cut you off. Are you almost finished? I'll give you the latitude.
3 sentences?
All right.
Some of you have heard my information before. It's not possible to communicate the information to effectively about how to make houses and buildings climate sensitive. I'd be happy to return at your invitation to explain this in detail that is simple to understand. Please consider my suggestions and my offer seriously, and I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
And thank you. If you stay, I think we have a speakers list here. Councillor McMicken, please.
I've been called worse, Madam Deputy Mayor. I said yesterday at our meeting that there's a big difference, but thank you, first of all, David, for coming.
My pleasure.
Let me attest to this man's background first and foremost. I got to serve with Dave for a number of years on Flamborough Council. He was always the creative entrepreneurial one that was by and large ignored. And not just by municipal government, but I confess provincial government as well. We talk a mean case about net zero things, especially buildings. And we're making progress. I don't want to downplay that. But I think we should embrace every creative entrepreneurial thought that comes forward. And I know David is plumb full of entrepreneurial creative thoughts. And David, I agree with everything you said. I think we need to find enhanced flexibility. We have 8,000 employees in this town, this city. And we don't often get an invitation of a skilled consultant as a volunteer to come in and talk to us about how to do things better. So let me just say thank you. And if there are any set of specific things you want somebody to articulate around this horseshoe, you, my friend, can come and talk to me anytime you want.
Thank you for those comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beatty, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and through you, David, thank you so much for coming here today. I'm wondering if, well, first off, let me offer that I think some of your observations are spot on. And I just want to make sure that I have summarized it. I've kind of taken a mental note of this, that we have a number of undertakings that we're proposing here within the city of Hamilton to increase housing stock, to retrofit existing housing stock in a more energy efficient, climate ready manner. But unless we improve the ease of use for everyday residents in undertaking those things, we're still not moving at the pace that we should be, and we're creating a bottleneck for ourselves. Have I kind of summarized your point there?
Yes.
Thank you. And I think you've got an ally in Councillor McMeekin has made a generous offer to continue, and I'd be interested in that as well, because I think that unless we have entry-level ease of use for everyday residents to be able to participate in the things that we're trying to do, we're going to have a harder time. We're going to be swimming upstream. So thank you for identifying that.
And thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Pauls. Councillor Dave Braden, good to see you again, Dave. And for those that may not know, Councillor Braden and I served in regional government together when he, I believe, was deputy mayor up in Flamborough. And then for a couple of terms after the amalgamation of the new city, served the Flamborough ward as well. So, Dave, you know the politics, you know the sometimes slow pace of municipal government, so I'm going to switch roles with you now. I just did the delegation of your speech. Yours.
There's someone on the line.
Is there a ghost? Is it?
Oh.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks for that reassurance, Councillor
Sorry
Crutch.
for the
Thank you.
interruption.
So, Councillor Braden, let's switch roles. I just did the delegation and gave your speech. You're sitting here with the authority of being an elected official. After hearing that, what would be the first step? Is it a referral of your suggestions to the appropriate departments? Give us some understanding, because you understand this particular building as good, if not better than anyone. Through you, Deputy Mayor Pauls, please.
Thank you for the question. I think I'm thanking you for the question. I think if I was in your position, you'd want to be sure that what I just told you is spot on. If it's spot on, and you can try to send any of your constituents to the front counter and ask a question such as, I've got a 2-car garage, I want to convert it into an energy efficient single dwelling unit. How do I start? We need the framework at this city to accommodate that kind of question and to move it forward. You don't need to babysit it, but you need to help it and nourish it. The way planning works now, this isn't a criticism. Planning funnels proposals because they have control. We're turning that role on its head. We need to nourish and support these ideas. It's a completely different attitude, and it's most difficult to change the way people do things, I admit. But it's worth trying. I used to be the front man for my business. You won't know this, but my business did well because my late partner, Nick Dalton, ran it. I was just a spokesman, and I blabbered away. He made it what it was. We really have all of the solutions. We really do. We just need to let them rise to the top and accommodate them. And as you as a counselor, you've got a terrible job because you have to try to figure out who knows what they're talking about. And in fact, I would suggest to you that very few people do.
You haven't lost your eloquence, David, and I just want colleagues to know before the pandemic, the councillor invited me up to his home and just to see how him and his wife, Kathy, live off the land and respect and value the land in almost like a rural type of manner in the minimal way that they survive. I was very impressed. Thanks, Dave. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pauls.
Thank you. Last is Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have to say to Mr. Braden that I find it refreshing that his candor over the years has not changed. He has always been candid and gets straight to the point. I listened to your comments, and I think to myself that residents who are pondering making changes to their home to improve its climate change mitigations don't come to City Hall as their first stop. So they're going through the web and they're trying to dig through. And the challenge with going through the web is you're getting information from all over the country in North America, and each state, each province has different rules. So that being said, I'd like to get your comments on perhaps the City of Hamilton launching or having a municipal climate change conference or symposium where those experts could come forward and there'd be plenary sessions and we could educate people in Hamilton in terms of what the process is and how this would actually help save you money as well as help the climate. Thoughts on that type of program?
Thanks for the question. I think I'm too close to the action. I know this business like the back of my hand. And I don't want to lecture you. I could just sit here and point at it and just say, just do what I tell you and you're going to solve the problem. That doesn't work. When people tell me what to do, I take great offense to that. But in fact, if you reach the point where you really want good information that's proven over 40 years, you can look around and you can find it. To the specific on the workshop, I think it's a great idea. We need places where there can be exchange of information to show what we have now, what works, and almost more importantly, what doesn't work. I'm not here to sell you heat pumps or any of that, nothing. I'm here to really beg for your attention and your thought, your critical thought. I'd like to support that. We have solved this problem 40 years ago. So I'm a little bit impatient, and I'm running out of time, to tell you the truth. So I would urge you to have that kind of a thing. But we should talk about what really works. And if I can't, I don't want to sound like an academic because I'm not that smart. But we got to talk about what the fundamental problem is. The fundamental problem is probably inefficient use of energy. Keep energy in your gun sights. You solve the energy problem, you solve the climate problem.
Thank you.
For the affordable housing problem, it has a fit. I don't have the time to start that. If you invite me back, I'd be flattered, but I think I can deal with that too. I understand costs. We just did a laneway house cost, about $110,000. Energy efficient, low rent, lots of solutions out there. You got to go looking for them. Sorry to go on, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
No,
You've been polite.
my question was
Great
open-ended, so
questions and great answers, so thank you. Next, we have Councillor Kretsch. And- Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were finished. Councillor Clark, go ahead. Sorry. I'm not going to cut you off, sorry.
it seems to be a habit these days, but not with you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just saying. David, I want to thank you for your attendance today, most sincerely, and I've always appreciated your candor, but more importantly, your knowledge, and it has helped me many times over, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kretsch.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for your delegation. I appreciate it. Through the chair, I just wanted to ask you specifically more about the tenor and tone of the comments you're making, and so not necessarily about the environmental aspects of it, which I think you've covered, but the tone and tenor of what you're suggesting sounds to me like clear language would be helpful, generally speaking. More equity when it comes to how we approach this. There's obviously a language for businesses that works, who do this work on a daily basis, but not a process that's equitable for the average person. And also you're looking for a dialogue, I think. Like that's also, I think, what I'm hearing here is the process through which delegates come here, they say something. This isn't really a conversation. This is just like, hey, here's my idea. And then we go, thank you. And then we have a couple questions, and then we kind of, there's an awkward pause, and then we just kind of move on with the meeting. That's not a dialogue. And so am I assessing that correctly in terms of the things you're talking about and focusing on?
Yes, you are, Councillor, but in two things. One is that's this environment here. The other environment is the environment at the service counter, because the general public isn't coming here. They're going there. It needs to be a language, and it needs to be helpful. And I'm not trying to be so subtle, because that's not one of my strong points.
I hear you.
The environment at the counter assumes that you know a lot about the process, and it's like, give us 16 copies in this sort of size with all of this information. And part of it is, it's not just complicated, it's almost threatening. It's not designed to be threatening, but I think I'm not exaggerating. That's how it is. When we got permits all over the province, I, of all people, would be the front man to go and solve the problem. You need to have that dialogue where there's an exchange, because where you and I start might be so far opposite, it's difficult to have the dialogue. We need to have some time. If that's helpful, we need that in lots of places, not just in this council, but at the counters. I hope that's an answer, and I appreciate the question.
Thank you. I only have one other question, yeah, just to clarify that. And I understand I'm not very subtle either. And so I think that the question I really have is about specifically that interaction at the counter that you're talking about. So what we're doing is we are changing the services in the city. We're saying climate change is real, it's an emergency, and we want to have services here to help people develop in a climate resilient manner. And you're saying, I think, yeah, we need to have targeted services available for those kinds of things. Because conversations are new for people. These conversations are not the same as the things they've been doing before. They're embarking in territory that they've never considered before. And we have to have a support or an ecosystem inside the city to support those new conversations.
Yes.
That's also what you're saying, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If I can on
Okay.
that specific. On the
Please.
counter, I would have the climate change ambassador in front of the counter so that they come to that person first. And if they're at all interested in affordable housing or energy efficient housing, they get intentional priority. And the reason they do is because climate change today is a priority. So you as council want to treat those that want to solve the problem as a priority. They get to the front of the line intentionally, because that's what a priority is.
Thank you, and the mayor. Next.
Thanks very much, Chair Pauls. Thank you, David, for coming in today. I appreciate it. I just want to note that the theme of customer service and accessible customer service is not a new theme that in terms of what I've heard, and I'm sure other members around the Horseshoe have heard, and I'm sure the city staff are aware of that as well. And so I just want to let you know that that's on my radar. As the mayor, I know that it's on the radar of a number of city councillors. And I would just say to you this, I appreciate the way that you described, very clearly how we can tackle something as fundamental as customer service and customer satisfaction, including on the issues that are perhaps a bit technical, how we can translate that into plain language and accessible service. And I think that that's a project or a kind of a bigger piece that all of us are interested in furthering. People not only need to know that the city is prepared to do some of this work, or that we're focused on climate change initiatives, but they need to feel when they're trying to do something that they're supported in doing their piece and their part as well, which is what I took from your presentation, and I hope that was I was hearing it properly.
It was.
Thank you so much. I would just ask that I saw that you provided documentation to our clerk, and I would just ask that documentation be forwarded to our planning department and our climate change office. I think I see Linda Lukasik is here, the director, so thank you so much for being here. But I think instead of it just kind of going into the ether, we'll just kind of move that information over and see if we can't start finding ways to get better at this piece. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor. And can I pass the chair to Councillor Clark? I just have, last term, you came and spoke to us. I remember clearly because you put a beautiful picture of your place. You live out in the country, right?
Yes, I do.
And it was just beautiful, and I know Councillor Jackson has been there. I haven't been there. But my question is, how much harder it is for people in the city, intensification, apartment buildings, where we live, how much harder is for us, for people that live in that circumstance, to do what you do when you live out in the grid, and you could do that. Can you please?
I can. Firstly, I want to say that the approach, I don't want to get too technical because then I'm sort of sneaking up on you and taking more time. That could take half an hour. You haven't got half an hour, and I don't think I do. But the same approach, this is all about understanding. It's all about elementary science. It's all about how heat moves. Now, I know this sounds simple, and I'm not treating you like children. That's the solution. When you understand what the problem is, you can apply it to 78 Stanley Avenue.
Can you use the microphone, Dave? We
Sorry.
broadcast and folks can't hear you. So if you could say that again.
The approach, it's the scientific approach, small s,
Right.
applies anywhere, old houses, new, urban, rural. What I can do in a country, which you can't do, is I can't have a loud windmill because it'll bug the neighbors. But by and large, everything else that I've done there, you could do here. Easier to do it from scratch, much easier, but very doable. In my business history, we did about 150 projects. Half of them roughly were renovation, additions, trying to keep the sort of the image of the house relatively the same, because when you change the image of a house in downtown, it annoys people. So the approach is identical. You can do those things if you live in any kind of normal house that is frame. So it's probably under 4 stories. You can solve that problem easily. May cost a bit more money.
It may cost a little, but I just wonder, because we have so many buildings that are going to be 20, 40-story high,
Yeah.
and how that would apply to what you're saying, because
Yes.
I remember looking at your place, and I thought, wow, I'd love to live there and live like that. You know, it was amazing. So I do. But my last question is, for new builds and all that, how much of the planning and zoning is not up to the city, but up to the province? You know, the province, if a builder's going to build something and we say, no, you can't build it that way, they go to the province. So how much is that affects what you're talking about?
To give me an open invitation to criticize you-know-who down in Toronto, it wouldn't be good, and I might say something I regret. But if the province isn't the problem. They're not helping us. And with Bill 23, they're trying to crucify everything we stand for. But what we can do here is be a bit more flexible on some, what I call arbitrary regulations, you know, to put my foot in it. We really don't care if a side yard is 3 feet or 2 feet. We don't really care if we raise the eave is the low part of the roof, 1 or 2 feet, if we keep the peak at the same. Those things are all urban regulations, which we have for good reason, because you have to draw the line in the sand somewhere. But you also need the common sense to recognize whether or not you've drawn that, how important that rule is. If you can be, you meaning the city, can be more flexible with some of those things if it affects a public good. Affordable housing is now a public good. The common market, if you're sort of a conservative thinker, conservative economist, the common open market doesn't supply affordable housing. It just doesn't. I got lots of Republican friends, by the way. So we need a different approach. And that approach can be helped a lot. If these are the staff here, the staff can go a long way to be flexible on things that they deserve to be flexible on. And I'm not talking about safety, and I'm not talking about longevity.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer, and thank you. And I don't see any other speakers on the list, so, Mr. Meekin.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. It didn't occur to me at the time when I first responded to my good friend David, but your idea of having somebody at the counter, you know, there are places and institutions and businesses that use that kind of an approach to really make things better. You know, I'd call it a client advocate. Someone who doesn't necessarily just have to jump through hoops, but maybe get some guidance around how best to jump through the hoops, how you expedite things. You know, we have a lot of talented staff people here who could fill in that kind of a role, and not just on the issues that Councillor Braden is raising, or former Councillor Braden is raising, but on other things as well. I can recall a time and a place, now we go to jail for this now if we tried to pull this off today, but back in Flamborough, we'd get a call from somebody who had a creative idea at 9 in the morning. By 12:30, we were having lunch with them, and by 1 o'clock, Dave and I were trying to figure out how the heck we could get it through council as quick as we could, you know. That's the kind, if it made sense. There are a lot of proposals that didn't make sense and we didn't do that, or if we did, we didn't follow through on it. But that's the kind of approach, particularly, and I'll be referencing this later when we talk about the staff report on services. There's some pretty scary information there that we ought to be paying some attention to. Anyhow, thanks, Dave, again, David.
And again, thank you. Yes,
Well, you asked a question about higher buildings in Hamilton, right? You might have said 15, 20 stories. Look, the folks called Indwell, you'll know who Indwell is.
Yes, I do.
I relate to people that are doing stuff that's outstanding. Call them. They got answers.
I know them very well, so
If you
I've been
know
there.
wood frame construction below 4 stories, if you can't find somebody else, call me.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again, Mr. Braden. And we need a mover and a seconder. I don't think I had that. Councillor Beatty and Councillor McMeekin seconded. No more questions. Thank you for your time and
Thank you for your
coming.
attention, folks.
Next time, bring your picture of your home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor. Oh. There was an e-vote. Everybody? Thank you, and it passes. We're going to go to 7.2. We have Charlie Matina, Hamilton Community Land Trust, respecting an introduction to the Hamilton Community Land Trust, a grassroots, all-volunteer, nonprofit community organization. Is Charlie Matina here? Thank you. Mr. Matina, you have 5 minutes. You'll hear the bell, and you have 1 extra minute after that. Thank you.
My name is Charlie Matina. I was just wondering,
Can you get closer
Yes.
to the mic? So,
I was just wondering, I was going to describe a little bit about the community in context, and I was wondering if I could get an extension
Yeah.
from the 5 minutes.
we would, how long do you think you need?
An extra 5 minutes?
How many?
An extra 5 minutes?
Okay, we need a vote for that, so I was wondering if we could do one, move it, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Jackson, and we're going to have an e-vote for an extra 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so my name is Charlie
We're
Matina.
going to vote first.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sure it will pass. Just procedurally, we need a vote, so thank you for your patience. And so at 9 minutes, we'll ring the bell, and that's it. And if you're sooner, that would be good. Everybody? 14, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Martina.
Okay, and the reason I wanted the extension is because I want to put the community in context of the Community Land Trust. It's one of the most important part. That's the C in CLT. And I just wanted some time for that. So,
Now, Mr. Martina,
yes.
if you, get closer,
Yeah.
I would love to hear it as well,
Yeah.
and everything else, so.
I usually am louder than
Counselor-
this, with my Italian
Just hold
accent.
on, Councillor Wilson, yes?
Just Deputy Mayor, out of respect for the delegate, could we just wait until the
Yes.
podium is clear? Thank you.
Okay, we'll wait.
Okay. Okay. I can start now. So this is the Hamilton Community Land Trust. It's been around for a while. I wanted to keep it in the context of the community first, right? Because it only makes sense. Or else you can basically Google what a community land trust is, and you can finish this very quickly. But to keep it in context, the first thing I wanted to say is where it started. So you can see that's the Beasley Badger. It's a mural on near McLaren Park on John Street. It started with a University of British Columbia student. who basically said, why don't you start a land trust? And we started the Beasley, this is a paper from the student. It was called the Beasley Community Land Trust Background Report. That's the beginnings. But the true beginnings came from the Hamilton Community Foundation initiative in 2002, Growing Roots, Strengthening Neighborhoods. It's probably one of the best urban revitalization programs I've seen because it invests in people. I don't know if you knew what Hamilton, I grew up in Hamilton my whole life. It was years of decay, years of disinvestment, abandonment. That's where it was starting from. Their neighborhoods were fragmented. The fabric of community were frayed, especially within the downtown core in the inner city. I grew up in the inner city, and I think this program actually was building upon to rebuild, and it was an investment in people, and that's why I think it's one of the best investments the city, anybody can put into the community. And so they focused, basically, what they did was rebuild that neighborhood again. There was no more community. So they started stitching that fabric of community back again through engaging community and empowering community. So this is the background of because this is what a community land trust does. So engaging, stitching back to the community, empowering. People started community building. We went from neighborhood watch programs to actually community and positive impact type programs. That's where the background came, and it's the Beasley. From there, the Beasley Neighborhood Association was formed, advocating, empowering, giving voice. Right? So I just wanted to go into that background and how it was. The original force was a destabilizing force, decay. Buildings are actually falling down in the downtown core, right? But real quickly, there was another destabilizing force. Once we stabilized the neighborhood, I could tell you Dr. Davies School had 100% turnaround. The lowest test scores in Hamilton, if not the lowest. There was a whole Spectator article in 2005, Beasley, not Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. It's not a neighborhood you would choose to live in. So these were the problems. By the time we started working together, some of these problems were alleviated. Actually, Beasley became stabilized. But another destabilizing force came, and that was people starting to move in. Prices of houses started going up. Renters couldn't afford. They were being displaced, being evicted. We tried our best to help with the evictions, you know. There was an apartment building in Beasley, and we worked together. There were some concessions made, but a little bit too late, you know what I'm saying? So that's when, again, going back to the UBC student, I said, why don't you start a neighborhood association? We're talking now about a very frustrated population, a very angry population now, people being evicted. That's not something nice. So we started the Beasley Community Land Trust. The Beasley Community Land Trust, you know, so when we started it, let's say the first thing we noticed is that that horse left the affordability stable a long time ago. So we ended up seeing if we can spread it out to Hamilton Community Land Trust. And that was the beginnings of the Hamilton Community Land Trust. So I just wanted to put that in community context. So basically, what is a community land trust? It's what I just said, a community organization. It's grassroots, all volunteer. In our case, we're a non-for-profit. For the purpose, and this is it, this is the thing, for the purpose of taking land off the speculative market, right, and putting it into community control. Once it's in community control, we hold on to that land and steward through community stewardship for social and community benefits. And that's basically it. And then hold on to that land permanently. So you're decommodifying the land. No longer does it stay, is it going to go back into the market? So that's basically a land trust in general. But it's the preservation of affordability, right? Just like an ecological land trust preserves nature, this preserves affordability. It creates an environment, an affordable environment for affordable activities to happen, just through the commodification of land. So I was just going to keep going. How does this work? Is this counting in my minutes? Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so our vision and mission statement is reflective. I'm going to go quick. I don't want to sound like an auctioneer here, but I'm going to go quick for your benefit. Our vision and mission statement is pretty well reflective of what I just said. The land trust movement is growing in Canada. There's over 40 and growing. It stretches from Vancouver, the Yukon, right into Halifax. And it is continually growing. I just was at a meeting with South Etobicoke wants to start a land trust. We're part of the Canadian network of community land trusts. It's good. So all these land trusts in Canada are networking together to provide this. Oh, the arrow. Okay. So it's a long-term approach. I think I discussed that to you, how we hold on to land for permanent affordability. These are the guiding principles which I just mentioned: community ownership, community stewardship, and permanent affordability. The one thing I wanted to mention is how it works. It works much like the community that we decided to start in Beasley, in which it's not just one organization, but many partners. So there's the community, so they identify a problem in the communities, which is, displacement, overcrowding, all these type of things. The community works together. You have the residents within the land trust itself pulling. You see that rope? They're trying to take that land off the market, that rope. They're taking the land off the market. So it's the residents, the community at large, and public officials, advisors, housing experts, we all work together. That's the way it works. It's a community. That arrangement, which you've seen of people, is a tripartite governance. That's the type of governance typically used in a community land trust. I was going to go into a lot of things about the leaky bucket of I think you heard a lot about affordability and affordability gaps and leaky buckets and all that kind of stuff, how we lose houses and everything. I'm not going to go, but this is I actually seen this happen. This is with displacement of limited income households. This is an unfortunate outcome. And it goes beyond this destabilization of neighborhoods. Once neighborhoods become destabilized, I don't know if you read the Spectator Code Red articles, it affects health, performance in school. It's really big. That's how I'm going to tell you that. And that's an understatement. I'm going to go quickly and tell you about our demonstration project of affordable housing ownership. And it was 278 Wilson Street. 278 Wilson Street is in Ward 3. It was an empty lot of land. Basically, it was a house that was burnt down. The city acquired it, made it surplus, went out to market. And from what I heard, I think they didn't have any bids. And then, and only then, and then and only then, it was able to get a donation, which we are grateful for. In 2017, Council gave us the land. We took possession in fall of 2017. We partnered with Habitat for Humanity, amazing organization. And basically, they built that house, and a family, sponsored a family at the time, that's living there within a year. So I think it was a great use of land. But this is home ownership. It's called the shared equity model of home ownership. And this is only one part of this demonstration project. Shared equity is based on the principle of dual ownership. You have the land at the bottom, which is owned by community controlled. 99-year lease, and you see all the uses of the land on top, right? Single-family homes and everything. Those are the affordable activities. In this case, we separate. Hello?
Keep going. You have actually 1 minute and a half. I'm timing you.
Oh, my goodness, eh? Okay, I'm going to go fast. There's a lot of technical issues. But real quickly, the separation of home, the house, and the property leverages that affordability. right? So you end up making that house more affordable because you're only buying the house. That's what Habitat did. They leased, they sponsored the family, financed it, and they get this house, right, for cheap. In the end of the day, the house, the people benefit from owning a house. The people also benefit from building equity. When you're a homeowner, you can build equity, and they get to use the property. They have full privileges of the property. The difference is upon sale, they can only sell the house. And the first right of refusal will go to Habitat, who owns the lease, buys the house, and you recirculate that land. It's a pay-it-forward system. So you're always maintaining that subsidy. It never goes above the affordability. Okay, so this is the affordability curve. You can see the black is the market, and the green is the affordability, what people can afford. One-time subsidy goes a lot further. And that's what it says. It's more effective, and it goes a lot further than trying to resell land, lose it to the market, and put more subsidies in there to create more land. It doesn't work. This is a very efficient way. It's less wasteful. Where do we want to go? Well, land trust works best when we can scale up, when we can spread out that affordability, right? And we can aggregate the ownership rights. And that's how land trust works. Because the more we can decommodify, the more affordability is spread out. But it's very difficult. And basically keep public lands in public hands. Being a community-owned type organization, I would say it is public in that manner.
Mr. Matina,
Yeah.
I hate to do this, but it's been over 10 minutes, just over.
Okay.
And we do have questions
Okay,
for
I have
you.
questions. Go ahead. I think
I feel like we have to move on. We have other
problem.
delegates, so if you could just give you 20 seconds to finish up, if you
Okay.
want to finish up something.
I just want to show you, these are just examples of other municipalities, how they help community land trusts. Los Angeles works with community land trusts on their transit routes to make it more equitable. You see Vancouver. But the one thing I wanted to make sure that you see is that the City of Toronto has something called the MURA program, which is the Municipal Multi-Unit Residential Acquisition Program, which not only for community, because one of the problems we have is acquiring land very quickly. Toronto actually provides funding and grants for community land trusts or renters associations to provide that. I just want to leave it there. Okay.
Thank you. We have a list of speakers that want to ask you questions, so I'm going to stop you now.
Okay.
If that's okay. I don't want to be rude, but
that's
we
nice.
gave you 10 plus 10
problem.
minutes. So on the first speaker is Councillor McMeekin, please.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Matina, a great concept. I don't know how well it's working, so my questions will bear down on that. How much land does the Land Trust currently control?
And the Hamilton Community Land Trust is only one property, 278 Wilson Street.
One property.
Yeah.
Okay. When I think of a land trust, I think of what some of the people who promote the idea of municipalities and the land trust, like in the city of Toronto, to acquire as many tracts of land as you can in order to reduce the price of housing between 25 and, in some cases, 35%. It's contingent upon having willing people donating parcels of land, buying parcels of land, turning it over either to the city or to community group or whatever. So you have one property. Good for you. That's great. That's a good start. And you appear to have some reasonably good community backstop support. How best can municipal land trust or community-based land trust acquire land, and what specifically would you like the city council to do to advance your good work?
Well, thank you very much for asking that question. Firstly, most land trusts in a hypothetical world will get land donated by these philanthropists and everything. That doesn't occur. Money is king. You know, no one really wants to give up land that easily. They rather give it up to an ecological land trust than an urban land trust because you can make a lot of money. Most lands of these 40 from Vancouver, as you can see, the City of Vancouver donates land. The City of Vancouver to the Hogan's Alley Community Land Trust. Toronto Housing donated over 700 houses to the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust and the Circle Land Trust in Toronto, East Toronto, over 700. 81 goes to Parkdale. They're called scatter plots land. So it is really a city. It's as I said, it's a multifunctional community type of thing. The city does help out a lot. And as advisors, not only just as, you know, here's some land, but as advisors, and they become part of it. But most of the lands usually come through city donations or some sort of donation in that of like.
So a supplemental question, are there large parcels of city land that you're aware of that you'd like to see the city donate to this land trust?
I have a whole list.
Have you shared that with,
Yes.
who have you shared that with?
The real estate department.
And what sort of response have you had to date?
They were very helpful. I like to say that, very cooperative. They understood the whole concept. I showed them this presentation. They understood the concept. They're really to help. But the policies, as I just mentioned, one of the policies is that the land goes out for sale first. If you get 0 bids, then we're eligible for a donation. There's no consideration of community benefit within that equation. So the cards are kind of stacked against land trusts, you know, when we have to compete against the market, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all in this together. We know there's a housing crisis, you know.
I'm a big fan, Mr. Matina, of the land trust concept, and not a big fan of the market dictating how we respond to housing needs. And would love to see some kind of entrepreneurial cooperative model that it could be part of our housing roadmap, you know, all of Hamilton roadmap, where WIONA and other unions, people that might, maybe the province could donate school lands, maybe they could change their policy that way, whatever. Seems to me that there's a potential comprehensive strategy that if we're going to go down this path in any significant way, we need to have some discussion about and embrace. I think it's a great concept. I just want a great concept that works. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor Kretsch, please.
Hi, Charlie.
Hello.
See you. Thanks for being here. And yeah, I'm already aware of the Hamilton Community Land Trust, as you know. And my questions specifically are about the barriers. And so I'm really following on what Councillor McMeekin was talking about in terms of that policy where we see an ability sort of directly to donate land to land trusts, but also like what your capacity is to be able to manage those kinds of things also, right? So I know you're a volunteer-run and volunteer-led organization. In terms of your scalability to make this happen, I'm presuming, it's an assumption, but I want to hear from you, you'd need to have like staff support, that kind of funding model to be able to let you scale this operation up past the one property.
I can answer that in 2 ways. So the first way is I can show you that even through COVID did a number on all community organizations. Don't forget, we're a community organization, all volunteer, right? This is, as Cameron just said. We had the capacity to do one because we use partnerships. We leverage our partnerships. In this case, we have a partnership with Habitat with Humanity Hamilton. They agreed to partner with us on any other future projects of these kind of plots of land. Anything bigger, we can partner with any other company. So our capacity comes through partnerships, right? That's how we build capacity. I mean, internally, all volunteer. But just to say that house was 2018, by the time they lived in there, throughout the whole pandemic, it's still there. You know what I'm saying? With the community being fragmented in holes, it's still there because the model is robust enough. And we do have very good partners. So that's how I would think we can do it. How we can do it, as I said, the city can become a partner of the Community Land Trust. In a lot of places, like I said, in Toronto, Vancouver, Chatham-Kent. in which the city actually takes a role in working with communities. So if you can provide administrative staff or anything, like I said, or even some funding that we can get administrative staff, that would be great. Just like any community organization, right?
Councillor?
Thanks. Yeah, I really wanted you just to be able to have a chance to say that and talk about what some of the barriers are, because it is, as you say, it's meant to be a community-based group. It's meant to be run by volunteers and people who are living and are from the community. But also you need the be able to support to do all the administrative work, because there's a fair amount of it. We're talking about housing. If this was easy, then you wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be here in some sense, right? So I think that that acknowledgement's important. And I think that the only way forward really is changing our policy. Like, the only way to do that is by changing our policy. So I really appreciate you highlighting that for us today. Thank you so much.
And thank you. And we have Councillor Nan next.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you, Charlie. Good to see you. I think we've mainly only communicated via phone and email all
Nice
this
to meet you.
time. Thank you for delegating today, and being the ward councillor of the one location that you do have, thanks to the good work of a former councillor, Matthew Green, on that file and helping seed this partnership initially. So my question just piggybacks off of the previous one around the organizational capacity. Can you speak to us a little bit about what you're embarking on in terms of organizational development for the Land Trust?
Well, I think success breeds success. That's the way it's going to work, right? One of the things that we're looking into, we just got a grant from the CHTC, the Canadian Housing Transformer. It's regarding for the LRT. So there's going to be, we're planning to work on the LRT, do community engagement on the LRT, to develop basically a counter plan, basically a renter's plan from the renter's point of view of how the LRT to be equitable, to be inclusive. So we're hoping during that process that we'll be getting more people, more memberships in that way. We are reaching out already through the Canadian Network of Land Trusts that we're trying to get. What we really need is that expertise in real estate, finances. We have a lawyer, so we donate the lawyer. So that's basically our plan, is to basically partner and to see. Like I said, as the Land Trust itself, there's three parts, as we mentioned, right? And we're going to be concentrating more on trying to get that expertise. We do have a mentor, the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust, or the Neighborhood Land Trust is one of our mentors in Toronto, Parkdale in West Toronto, very big, and they're mentoring us through the process of capacity building.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you very much. I'm really grateful for your delegation. And I don't know a lot about cooperative land management, excuse me, but I do think, in my opinion, and I think you share this opinion, there is great potential of linking community land trusts with government housing supply programs. So I'm going to be a little facetious with my first question, just to underscore, I think, the need for all of us to collectively kind of change our thinking. Why don't we just take part of Gage Park and sell it off for housing?
That would be up to the city. I mean, yeah, that's a very, I understand what your line of thinking is, yeah. And yeah, that would be up to the city.
I'm being facetious because we would never do that.
I understand.
Because through the chair, we value that as a public amenity.
Yes.
But we have no problem selling off public land to the market because we don't value that land as a community amenity to fulfill certain social long-term goods. I think that's what you're...
Basically, yes. We're not saying to sell parks or anything like that, but we're also saying there's a lot of empty spaces in Hamilton that could be filled by a land trust. As I said, I don't know if you noticed, but that house was a very good investment. It probably cost the city, at the time, it was $78,000. For $78,000, it might not sound a lot for all of you, but that's a house for somebody, a family. And that was a demonstration project. We just need to scale it up. You give us property, we'll do it. I'm going to be honest about that. We can do it. We've established partnerships. We can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just confirm then some of what I think I've heard, I was taking notes, some of the principles of which I thought I heard you say, is that a community land trust is one way of us, of trying to, because we have for too long excluded land policy from housing policy, and a community land trust is an opportunity for us to link those two components in order to continue to provide community benefit, a legacy from that land. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. You're more eloquent than I am, so I thank you very much. That is what we're saying. That's the principle of a community land trust.
Thank you.
The other thing I thought I heard you say through the chair, if you could confirm, is right now, we have a number of housing developments that were operating as not-for-profits from CMHC grant, say 40 years ago, and the terms of that agreement are coming up, and therefore we have no ability in which to ensure that that publicly funded property does not go into the market, which we know in most cases it will. Under a community land cooperative model, that would stay within the public realm forever.
Exactly. I don't know if you see, well, it's gone now. The city of Toronto did that with a bunch of houses. They call it scattered housing. They donated all these properties, 81 to the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust, in which they then partnered with the YWCA to form, they're the new landlords, as they will say. It's a new model of managing that. And so that's exactly what they're doing in Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate your delegation, and I'm hoping that through your lead and your example of the amazing Beasley neighborhood, that we can start to make a link between land policy and housing policy. Thank you, through the chair.
Thank you, Councillor, and we'll be going to Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pauls, and through you, thank you to Charlie for being here and making this delegation today. Deputy Mayor, my question is actually to staff, so I'm procedurally asking how I may go about making that related question to staff.
Can we ask for staff now, or wait till the delegations?
Would you receive the delegation and then you can
Okay,
ask staff questions?
so we'll receive the delegation and then you could ask staff the question. There's no other, so thank you, Mr. Martina, for coming.
Thank you very much.
And for sharing, and you're welcome to stay for if you want and
I
see
appreciate
other
that.
questions that we'll ask to staff. Okay?
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
So I'll need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Beatty and Councillor Crutch, thank you. And it carries. So, Councillor Beatty, you could ask the question, and maybe it's Jason Thorne or whoever wants to answer it. I'm not sure. So, or real estate, I don't know, but ask the question.
Very good. I'll throw it to the bench then through
Yes.
you, Deputy,
See who
Deputy
jumps
Mayor
on it.
Pauls. Yes. Based on the presenter today, and I'll back up my comments leading to the question. My previous experience with the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, and now in this role as a councillor for the City of Hamilton, there's this constant tension between the need to divest ourselves of surplus land to unlock the capital within in order to reinvest back into things, affordable housing being one of them, versus retaining public lands or moving them into the hands of nonprofits or land trusts or whatnot. So we have this tug that takes place. We have to keep it, but we also have to sell it. And I'm not sure where the balance point or the saw-off point between the two are, where it becomes less advantageous to sell land and more advantageous to put it into some kind of a land trust holding or provide the land or sell it at a discount to an affordable housing provider, et cetera, et cetera. So I think my question to the bench would be, how would we investigate a process where we may evaluate this more fulsomely, thinking of our own surplus land holdings, thinking of school board holdings, surplus land holdings, and try to find a different way to approach this instead of just constantly trying to liquidate these assets? How would we evaluate the ability to retain these assets or move them into a different public ownership model that we would have more bang for our buck, better usage in the long term? So I'm throwing that to the bench, and I'm wondering if they can
Great
provide
question.
guidance.
And Jason Thorne, please, Director.
Yes, so through you, Madam Chair, Jason Thorne, General Manager of Planning and Economic Development. There's a whole host of ways where sort of decisions get made in terms of disposition of properties and how that is done. In some cases, they come forward as individual opportunities for council's attention. In some cases, they are part of other reports. I would say that the idea of a kind of a step back and comprehensive review of city land holdings and how they can be leveraged for the purpose of, I'll say broadly, affordable housing, whether that takes the form of land trust or other forms. That was one of the key recommendations the council approved last week in the housing roadmap. That was one of the year one actions, was to look at how we would actually go through that process of what assets the city has and what approach should be taken to disposition. We did do that exercise, I want to say 2015, 16, something like that. There was council direction at that time to do a full review of properties, and that was done. And a number of properties came back to council. There was direction at that time to dedicate some of those properties to affordable housing providers. So there was a couple that were dedicated, for example, to City Housing Hamilton. Some were directed for sale on the market with the funds to be directed towards affordable housing. And then some were deemed to be sort of not viable for disposition at that point in time for various reasons. That was looking at a large number of properties, but in recognition of the fact that situation has changed, potentially the development feasibility of some of those properties may be different now than it was 6 or 7 years ago. That's why that was put forward as one of the actions in the housing roadmap, that there is merit in undertaking again.
Thank you. Does that answer your questions? And
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'll kind of try to restate. I think what I heard from General Manager Thorne was close to where I was going. I'm just trying to understand if we have a current standardized approach to looking at our land holdings and determining if it's best to sell or best to hold, and what that holding model looks like, if it's best to divest to another public entity for ownership over the long term. Do we have, or will this report that you're alluding to come back with some recommendations on how we change our thinking on this? Because it strikes me that some of this is perhaps dated if we're talking about data from 2015. A lot has changed since 2015. And secondarily, the standard approach to it, or a systemic framework for having this conversation. And I guess that's, instead of having everything coming back ad hoc, piece by piece, where this property versus that property, I'm just trying to understand if this will lead to a holistic view, a citywide. And I would throw school board properties in this too. It's a very complicated process for acquiring school properties, but we're the only ones that can, effectively. So as we hear back on this report, Jason, is this something that would lead to a different approach, or are we still going to be looking at this through the same lens going forward?
GM?
So through the chair, the current approach in terms of how that happens is where there is a surplus city property, it goes through an internal review process if there's not, and to see if there's an identified program need. So that program need might be a library or a public works yard or a something. What that process probably doesn't do well enough at this point is, notwithstanding that there may not be a city program need, is there a broader community need for affordable housing? So when I talk about looking at the land holdings through that lens, that's a missing lens in the day-to-day decision making. As I said, it was done comprehensively a few years ago, and I think is worth doing again. But in terms of that being part of the day-to-day process, I would expect that's something that may come out of doing this kind of comprehensive review. So it's not just something we do every 5 or 6 or 7 years, kind of go through all of the properties, that it becomes part of the day-to-day decision making.
So Councillor Beattie, would you like to put a motion to affect that, or is it a friendly direction to come back with a report? What would you like to do?
I think I'd leave it as the second of the two.
Friendly
I'm not sure that I would
direction?
have a motion on the fly like that,
Okay.
but there may be something moving forward that we could look at. That second piece that you spoke to, GM Thorne, of bringing that different lens to the day-to-day decision-making instead of every 8 years, I think that's going to be important, and really have to stress the need to take another look at surplus school board land holdings and how we acquire them more efficiently for broader use.
Thank you for that. And GM Jason Thorne, is a friendly direction to bring back the report?
Through the chair, I think we have that direction already through the
Okay.
adoption of the housing roadmap. So
All right.
yes, we
Thank you.
have that already.
Thank you very much. Next is Councillor Meekin, please.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Just building what's been said and what's been asked and the responses, I was going to suggest and will suggest that any and all discussion, conversation today be referred to the housing roadmap folk. They've identified land acquisition quite appropriately as a essential part and parcel of promoting the concept and expediting the concept of affordable housing. I would just say, for the record, that I'm pleased with whatever efforts we've made in the past to acquire land as a municipality. I believe, and in chatting with the mayor en passant, that it is a responsibility for the city, if we're serious about encouraging a buy-in of community land trust, either privately through community ownership or in partnership with or as a municipality, the buy-in's going to be essential. I think there are a lot of groups out there, from Indwell, which has been mentioned, to church groups, to unions, to what have you, who in their heart of hearts want to see purpose-built housing completed, and would, if we had the right look in our eye and could articulate it well, share the land acquisition journey with us, which would by definition almost create opportunities when coupled with development charges and other vehicles that we and or the province have put in place, Madam Deputy Mayor, could dramatically reduce the housing crisis that we have.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Cretch, please.
Thanks. Just briefly building on what Councillor Beattie and Councillor McMeekin were saying, just to maybe zero in a little bit more. There's about 6 of us who've been talking about this, I would say tangentially, since the beginning of this term. I was very direct about it, I think, right at the beginning, saying, hey, what about that surplus lands? And then you said, like, basically, chill, we're going to have a report coming forward with the housing roadmap, and then that will give us some more information. I guess my question for you is, there's a lot of fluidity in that roadmap, right? In terms of the different little iterations. When can we expect to have that back, and how does that appear through that process? Because right now, we have an outstanding business list that tracks all these different things, but we don't have like an outstanding business list for the roadmap, right? Again, there's a fluidity there, so it's hard to know when we can expect these things to appear.
Thank you, GM.
Yeah, so the chair, so I don't think we've put a specific date on that one, other than it was one of the year one priorities. So I can go back to my team and get a sense of when we could come back with what I expect we'd be bringing forward first is a scope as to how we would tackle it. I would say at the moment we are, the folks who'd be leading this are in the final stages of delivering on a direction that we had from last term of council related to looking at potential property opportunities along the LRT corridor. So that work is getting close to be ready to bring back to council. So I'd expect that we'd be doing this piece of work immediately thereafter. But I can get a bit more of a definitive timeline in terms of when we think we can have that first report in front of you with a scope and an overall timeline of how we would tackle it.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's really helpful. That's all I wanted to know. So you're saying kind of post-summer, we're looking at getting some more of this information once the folks who are working on the LRT report are done doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see GM Burton, you popped up. I do not know if you want to say something or add to it, so.
Thank you. General Manager Angie Burden, General Manager of Healthy and Safe Communities. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Council. I would like to add to GM Thorne that in addition to the regular reports that are brought through the appropriate lead GM, we will also have an annual report back to Council to report on the overall progress of the roadmap, and it will also be another way of tracking and monitoring and evaluating how we're making traction on these year one priorities. The final thing I would say with respect to the roadmap is that the need for development and acquisition capacity is identified as one of the 6 infrastructure needs for the roadmap and speaks to some of GM Thorne's comments earlier about we'll be making progress on certain elements and over time, I think, developing capacity in those areas as we become more aware of the needs to ensure that we have a strategic pipeline for some of the work that was mentioned today through the delegation and the council discussion. Thank you.
And thank you for that added information. Thank you. I see no others. Oh, I see Councillor Wilson. Maureen Wilson, please. Second time.
Thank you. If I could just get clarification on I too am very interested in an acquisition strategy and have always been a fan of community land trusts and cooperatives. Just as a footnote, despite the known benefits of cooperatives since the Great War, they still only comprise about 3% of our land, our housing, despite the benefits. So there obviously are some structural and systemic problems that are disabling them, including some of the funding formulas set out by the federal government. It's not a city issue per se. But to that point, as part of the report that's coming forward, I think this is for Director McMullen, will there be an overview of any financial tools or levers that may or may be available that we have not used in our strategy of acquisition going forward?
Thank you, Director.
So through the chair, may I start with the first part? So what I was speaking to previously was focused more on disposition of city-owned lands. The roadmap also talks about an acquisition strategy in terms of proactively going out and acquiring lands. I would say that one's a bit more complicated in that if you're out acquiring lands, you need to move quick. So in order to take on an acquisition program, which, as I said, is also something that we've been given direction to do through the roadmap, we would need to be looking at both prioritization of need, what types of properties we are looking for, and then what sort of funding envelopes exist to do that, because we don't want to be going out and potentially acquiring properties not knowing how much money we have to spend. So the precedent I would point to would be what Council did a couple of years ago around industrial lands, where what Council did at that time, recognizing the need to acquire to get some more industrial lands shovel ready. There was a line of credit that was approved with some scope around the types of acquisitions that staff would have the authority to pursue. And that program's been underway for a couple of years and has had both acquisitions and then disposition of those lands that were acquired. So I think it has gone fairly well. So I would imagine that we'd be looking at those kinds of financing tools in terms of having a known source of funding if we're going to go out and try to do proactive acquisition in the marketplace.
Thank you. Director McMullen, do you have something to add or no? Thank you. Councillor?
No, thank you. And I trust that part of that conversation that this council will have to be engaged in is sometimes those opportunities you need to move like a bunny. And often government is the opposite of moving like a bunny. So ensuring that we have trust and confidence in staff, that they have the delegated authority to do so. So I think we need to move on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to 7.3. We have Daniel Furheit, respecting vaccination requirement and how that's creating resources issue in the system. And he will be virtual. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I didn't choose that title, by the way. Somebody else chose the title of that delegation. I think they must have taken it from some part of the email.
Okay.
Anyhow, thank you.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I actually didn't know you were the Deputy Mayor when I heard you speak at the last council meeting. As most of this council may know, my name is Daniel Furheit. I do a lot of advocacy on Twitter under the handle Lion Advocacy. And I've been focusing since February of 2022 on best practices for the vaccines, okay, the vaccine rollouts. I've touched on a bunch of other topics as well, but the vaccines have been my focus because it's something that I've encountered in the course of my work and like everyone else. I've appeared before this council before to try to get the council to reverse its vaccine mandates for new hires, which has kept a lot of Hamiltonians, Ontarians, and Canadians from joining the City of Hamilton workforce. I wanted to start my delegation today on a bit of a different tone because I've been quite serious in the past delegations, and I thought a bit of humor might lighten things up. I haven't been exactly in the most humorous tone, so I asked ChatGPT to write some jokes for me, and here's what it gave me. I said, tell me a joke about a city council that kept its vaccine mandates in place for way too long, and here's what it came up with. Why did the city council's vaccine mandates stick around for so long? Answer, because they were afraid of catching a case of re-electionitis. And then I said, tell me a joke about just councillors generally. And it said, here's what it said. Here's a joke about city councillors. Why did the city councillor bring a ladder to the council meeting? Answer, because they wanted to climb the ranks.
Okay, Daniel.
The last one was, here's the third one.
Mr. Farrant, I respect you, and it's just that maybe it's inappropriate to let council disparately what they, the way they vote or the way they think.
It was the point. My question to Jack, it was like a general light joke about city council. It wasn't like to Derek. No, that wasn't. And ChatGPT wouldn't have done that. It's against its terms of use. That wasn't my point. My point was as follows. I then asked like a lighthearted, nothing to make fun of anybody. Like that wasn't the point. I said, tell me a joke about Mayor Horwath, and it said.
You know what? I'll just stop. Can I talk to him? Mr. Farrant.
Let me just finish my delegation. It's related.
Can you just finish without doing the jokes and just about your concern about the vaccination?
What I'm saying is related. If you let me finish, it's exactly on point. The point was that.
The problem is every councillor here is feeling that it's inappropriate. I am the chair, and if you could just, the point.
I'll continue.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.
The point was that there was outdated information on the internet. Okay, there's outdated information when it says that when ChatGPT says that Mayor Horwath is not the mayor, it's outdated. It said she was the leader of the NDP. My point is that it was relying on an outdated information from September of 2021, the same way that this council has been relying on an outdated policy or its vaccine mandates. And the impact, this is directly, I don't know why you keep cutting me off. It's directly related to what I'm trying to say to this council. It's directly on point to what I was addressing in the agenda. Like, I've been waiting for 3 months for this delegation, and to have my time now abridged because of this. You know, you talk about respect. I respect this council, and I was very clear that the lighthearted jokes was just a way to lighten the mood. And I'm disappointed that I can't finish what I was trying to say. The point was that it was outdated information. This council has had a policy that's been outdated, and it's had an impact on people's ability to get work. It's had an impact upon people's ability to join the workforce. I received those inquiries from members of the public, and it breaks my heart. And I've tried to speak to this council many times, and they keep pushing me off. They say it's not on the agenda. It's not on the committee. I couldn't even get into the committee any other committee. Nobody wants to hear it. But there's hundreds or thousands of people that can't get jobs because of an outdated policy. City of Toronto took theirs off in November. It's creating a whole bunch of problems in the workforce, and I'm trying to communicate this to the council. And I try with jokes. I try seriously, and I don't know what works for you guys because I can do it in writing, but I don't know who it goes to, and it doesn't get to the right people. I'm really like begging here, just not for much, just for a bit of an audience. And so my point was, okay. If I could finish, and how much time do I have now? Because I had to do
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, do you think that's fair? Can I bring a motion? Can I ask you to bring a motion to extend my time for 5 minutes?
I just want to say, Mr. Farhan, that at the end of our report from Dr. Richardson, we will be having a motion. And I think we are discussing it. We're going to hear what Dr. Richardson says, even HR. So if you would just...
I'm just asking for a vote if I can have 5 more minutes.
I can't, I need a mover, and I will go through the process. I need a mover and a seconder.
Can I get one person to?
Is anybody, if anyone would like to?
Sorry, you put me on mute. Is that on purpose?
Even if I move it,
who put me on mute?
I didn't put on.
Through the deputy mayor, I'm the one that put the delegate on mute because the deputy mayor was speaking and addressing committee, so it wasn't your turn to speak.
She can tell me if I'm interrupting her, and I apologize if I did.
Okay, so Daniel, Mr. Farhan, let's just. Your time is up, but I just want you to know that you go on YouTube and listen. There will be a motion today, and we have Dr. Richardson with the update. And if you wait, it will decide today, and we'll see. And we know how you feel.
Can I respond?
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Can I ask you? Can I ask if anyone's going to bring a motion?
Yes, I just
give me
said
5 more
that.
minutes.
I just said that we will have a motion and we'll decide today. All right?
No, sorry for extending my time.
Okay. No, nobody wants, I'm sorry.
Nobody's bringing motions?
I needed a seconder. We cannot accept.
I have 15,000 people that are following me that have asked me for help.
I know. And
Point of order.
And Council,
okay.
Mr. Farhan, if you could just go. Okay, it's a point of order, Councilor Cretch.
Thanks. Just at the beginning of this meeting, you said that this is not a debate with delegates. This is entering into a territory where we're entering into a dialogue and a debate between the chair and a delegate. It's going on beyond the 5 minutes. I don't think it's appropriate. Then we have to end the delegation respectfully and move on with the meeting.
Okay, we're going to move on. And thank you. And we will have a motion and we'll move on today. So thank you again, Mr. Farhan, for coming. Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation, please. We have to receive it. I'll move Councilor Clark, and I'll move it to receive the delegation. And Councilor Clark will second it. Thank you.
So through the chair, because you're the deputy mayor.
I
Councillor
can't
Clark
do
will
it?
have to move, and Councillor Pauls, you could second.
Okay, I could second it, and Councilor Clark will move it. Thank you. And thank you again. Yes.
And to be clear, that delegate that just spoke to us, this is his third time speaking to this council.
Yes.
So I didn't appreciate his inference that we never want to hear from him, because we most certainly have 3 times.
Right. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on.
So, sorry.
Did we vote? First,
I'm
e-vote,
still
please.
waiting.
Sorry, could I respond to that? That was directed at me.
Angela? Okay, just hold on. It's been contagious. Okay, carries 10-4. All right, let's take a big breath, please. Everybody, we're in this. It's very, okay, we're ready to move on. Okay, we will now hear from all the delegates wishing to speak on item 8.2, Better Home Hamilton Home Energy Retrofit Program. We will take one vote at the end to receive all the delegates on this matter. So first up is Ian Borsak, Environmental Hamilton. Is he here or is he on video? Oh, there he is. Okay. Thank you. You have 5 minutes, and you'll hear the bell, and you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to put on my timer really quick, even though I don't think I need a full 5 minutes. Yes, so thank you, Council and Committee. My name is Ian Borsak. I'm the Interim Executive Director at Environment Hamilton. You've all heard from me already so far in this term. And today before you is a staff report and update on the Hamilton Home Energy Retrofit Program pilot that we at Environment Hamilton are very much in favor of. Councillor Jackson, you may recall, you voted unanimously along with your colleagues 2 terms ago, back in 2017, to get the ball rolling on this process. And that was back in 2017, and I'm very pleased to see that we are now at this phase of the project, long overdue. As we have heard from previous delegate David Braden, retrofitting pre-existing buildings is extremely important for us to address our climate change goals and reduce energy consumption. We know through our multiple years of advocacy around the city that homeowners do want to retrofit their homes to be more environmentally friendly, to reduce energy consumption and ultimately reduce what they're paying on their energy bill, but it can be quite challenging. It can be quite challenging to figure out what the best way of reducing that is, what the best value for dollar process that they can go through is. And it can also be quite challenging to find out exactly how to actually do that. So when we're talking about a program, we're talking about what I think, David Braden's delegation, I think was perfectly timed for today, is ease of use, making it simple for people to understand and making it easy for homeowners and property owners to retrofit those buildings in a way that doesn't impede their use of their building and doesn't impede the use of any tenants that maybe live in that building, but ultimately reduces their energy consumption, reduces their bill, helps the City of Hamilton achieve climate change targets that we have. The pilot program that's before you now for consideration, we think is very reasonable. There, of course, will be lots of room for tweaking the program and moving beyond that, but when we're looking at a target of 50 houses before the end of 2024, that's both ambitious, but I think fairly reasonable within the context of what the pilot is seeking to do. Ultimately, through my experience watching how this program unfolded since the initial proposal from Trevor Imhoff when he went to council seeking approval to apply for the FCM grant, and then the work that Nikolai Strabek has been doing working with Mohawk University, I'm quite confident that this pilot will be very successful. I really, truly believe that the work that staff have been putting into this has been extremely substantive. I think that the outcomes that we see from this are going to be really positive, and ultimately we at Environment Hamilton are going to continue to push for this to be expanded, not just a pilot, but to follow in the footsteps that our municipalities have laid out, and to really turn this into a full program that can be accessible by all Hamiltonians. Just with a little bit of time left, I just want to share that the use of the local improvement charges is not new. I'm a tenant, and our landlord recently applied for an LIC to replace our lead pipe replacement hookup. It was extremely easy for both my landlord, who I think was quite interested while I was asking so many questions about the process of applying for a city grant to replace our plumbing. But it was also extremely easy for me as a tenant. The city communicated very clearly. It was very easy for our landlord to identify the contractor who would do the work, and it was done very quickly and affordably for our landlord. And that same rules and those same processes need to apply for this pilot program, and I think that they will. It's extremely positive to see this happening forward, and if we do not move forward with this pilot program, I'm not sure how else the City of Hamilton will begin to address our built form and our existing buildings that need to be retrofitted if we are to meet our climate change targets. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, I know that there'll be other delegates today speaking on this, and I know who have many of other opinions and viewpoints on this and how to make the pilot successful, but ultimately from Environment Hamilton, we want to say, keep up the good work. Let's finish this and get this pilot implemented.
Thanks very much, Mr. Borsick. I'm going to hand the chair back over to Councillor Pauls.
Thank you.
Or for Deputy Mayor Pauls.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Is there any, okay, yes, we have a speakers list. Councillor A. Wilson, please.
Thanks, and through you, Chair. Thanks, Ian. I know Environment Hamilton's been pushing for this pilot for a long time, but we also just heard this morning about the need for something more comprehensive than a pilot. Can you just help us fill the gaps between where we are today and where we're going? So we're going to get this pilot undergoing. We're getting 50 homes done. We know that that's a real drop in the bucket compared to where we want to be by 2030. What do some of those intervening years look like, and what are some of the things Environment Hamilton's going to be pushing for us as a city? What does scaling up look like once we move forward on this pilot?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the pilot needs to be successful. We need to ensure that those 50 homes that are chosen will get the most maximized benefits from it. But we also, beyond that, the pilot program is only for heat pumps and air sealing. There's multiple other aspects that homeowners could pursue that we won't be offering loans for yet, hopefully. However, ultimately, I do think for the purposes of the City of Hamilton and looking what other municipalities have done, looking at what Burlington is doing right now, they're a little bit ahead of us. Starting at this smaller scale, single offer, like single product offer, I think based off our discussions with Hamiltonians around the city over the years, very easy for them to wrap their heads around. If we want to start having discussions about what other measures they can take to improve their homes, such as what David Braden was talking about, I think that needs to be talked about, and we really need to start as next steps identifying beyond heat pumps and air sealing, what else do we want to roll into this type of program? What other services are easy to communicate to residents that ultimately there can be a market there in terms of contractors to do this work? And then beyond that as well, really just trying to focus on, okay, if heat pumps and air sealing are the low-hanging fruit that we know are the easiest to implement, what's the next one? What's the one after that? To the point where we're talking about a much wider laundry list of things that a homeowner could apply for. But looking at the success of something like the Halifax Solar City program that's been expanded beyond its initial offering, which was just solar heat pumps for water. Or solar hot water heaters, and then looking at what like the Toronto Help program did, which was a very long list of products that they could be offering. I think we're going along the same route that will be really easy to communicate to homeowners across the city. And ultimately, what I would like to see is, people around the city frustrated that they weren't part of the pilot and really eager to be part of the next phase 2 of this project going forward.
Thanks so much. That's my question.
Thank you. Mayor Horwath, please.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Deputy Mayor Pauls. My question is a simple one, and it's kind of following up on what Councillor Alex Wilson was getting at, and that is, does the pilot, in your opinion, have the capacity or ability to create or to pilot or some of the procedural pieces that would make the process more accessible? Because that was another big piece of Councillor Braden, or sorry, of former Councillor Braden's presentation. So it was the the plain language, it was the accessibility of process, it was all of those pieces on top of the the more technical pieces, if you will. Is that something that's feasible?
Yes, and I think, as I said before, following, we're using the LIC mechanism for this. for the lead pipe replacement was very easy for my landlord, and we should be following that same process. And then as well, through the pilot, ideally those 50 homeowners are going to be willing to share their experiences in the story of the pilot, not just with the city evaluating how the pilot actually unfolded, but if their experiences were positive, using those folks as ambassadors for the program when we expand it and roll it out there. Because I think ultimately that's, you know, it's one thing to hear from someone from the city of Hamilton saying, oh, apply for a grant, but then when you hear from a homeowner saying, it was actually really easy, installation only took, 2 days, I've now reduced, X number of dollars from my heating bill in the winter, that type of language and that type of storytelling will be really important for the city of Hamilton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And there's no one else on the list, so thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we'll move on. B, we have Michelle Diplock, West End Home Builders Association. It's virtually, so welcome, and you have 5 minutes as well.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. That's displayed okay?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Deputy Mayor and members of Council. My name is Michelle Diplock, and I'm a professional planner as well as the Manager of Planning and Government Relations with the West End Home Builders Association. We represent 300 member companies made up of all disciplines involved in the residential construction industry, including builders, developers, and for today's purposes, professional renovators. Today, I'm here to talk to you and speak in support of the City of Hamilton developing a home energy retrofit program as a key economic opportunity for our city. The West End Home Builders Association has been heavily involved in the development of this program through its various iterations since March of 2021. We were consulted as a stakeholder in the Bay Area Climate Change Council's workshops to inform their advocacy and support for developing a home energy retrofit program, as well as supporting their market readiness analysis. Over the course of July 2021 to December 2022, WHBA has met with city staff in various departments to share our organization's expertise in the home energy and renovation space. In September of 2022, WHBA participated in formal community consultations that were done by Mohawk Center for Climate Change Management to inform the program that is being presented to you today. Today, we're here to present to the General Issues Committee in support of the City of Hamilton's development of a robust home energy retrofit program. Advanced construction techniques mean we build new housing at some of the highest energy efficiency rates in North America, but meanwhile, our existing building stock is aging and is often in need of repair. The retrofit of existing older homes is critical to meeting the City of Hamilton's community energy and emissions plan goals, and there are a variety of opportunities the city has to incentivize this. The incentivization of home energy retrofits will adjust consumer behavior to help the retrofit market grow exponentially and can shift already planned renovations towards greater energy efficiency outcomes. The program and the need for renovations presents a significant economic opportunity to our local contractors and renovators in the Hamilton region. WHBA is supportive of the program being designed to stack benefits of other programs available at the federal and provincial level. Importantly, not every homeowner will require funding from the City of Hamilton to implement energy efficiency retrofits. They may just require access to the city's concierge service being developed to help them understand which renovations and retrofits will help optimize their energy. Finally, I wanted to finish with a word about qualified contractors. One challenge with program implementation is finding trusted contractors and renovators to assist in retrofits and renovations. This is where the West End Home Builders can help. Our website provides a dedicated tool to find qualified renovators in the Hamilton area. And through the Canadian Home Builders Association, our renovator members are certified through the RenoMark program, which requires our renovators to abide by a code of conduct, be fully licensed and permitted, and provide warranties on their work. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, and you're right on time. And is there any speakers? Councillor Cesar.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michelle. And just a question on the last point you were making about labor and contractors. Do you have a perspective on any constraints in the labor market that could affect either the pilot or looking beyond that? Because, generally speaking, the market and for labor has been tight the last few years.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a challenge. It's a challenge kind of across the entire industry, just in terms of being able to attract and retain talent in the Hamilton area, especially as it relates to skilled trades. And so this is an area that we are working on kind of at the federal and provincial government levels, and we will have kind of a forthcoming report looking at the specific barriers to trades in Hamilton. So definitely something that we're working on, but it's maybe not in the scope of the city of Hamilton.
Okay,
Thank you. All right, thank you, Michelle, for your presentation. There's no other councillors on the list, so thank you again.
Thank you.
Next, it's Zoe Green, Bay Area Climate Change Council. It's virtual, please. You have 5 minutes, and thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Zoe Green. I am the manager with the Bay Area Climate Change Council. We're also known as BAC. BAC is a collaboration of existing organizations across Hamilton and the Burlington area, referred to as the Bay Area. We've come together to catalyze climate action in our community. Several of our members have provided written correspondence today or are also delegating. BAC is focused on making sure that Hamilton and Burlington are thriving net zero communities by 2050. The only pathway to a low carbon future in Hamilton involves transitioning our existing buildings off of fossil fuels. So we're here today in support of item 8.2, Better Homes Hamilton. Across the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, buildings are the biggest source of emissions at 45%. Here in Hamilton, buildings are second only to industry. Given the significance of emissions from buildings, BAC has a buildings implementation team. They're focused on addressing those emissions. That interdisciplinary working group, if you will, provided input on the incubation plan that is in front of you today. We fully support the staff recommendation that the Better Homes Hamilton program incubation stage to start this year with a target of 50 homes to be retrofitted before the end of 2024. And we know that homeowners will be interested. From the results of a home energy retrofit education campaign that BAC rolled out in the fall of 2021, there is great interest in home retrofits. BAC produced 34 educational materials for that campaign. So that would have included infographics, social media content, and videos about energy efficiency upgrades and incentive programs. There were 300,000 views across that material by over 120,000 accounts. I should mention that BAC was still relatively new on social media at that time, but still getting some big numbers, so we expect to see even greater engagement when it comes time to amplify Better Homes Hamilton. From that campaign, the two most popular topics, heat pumps and air sealing, both of which will be eligible under the Better Homes Hamilton program, as well as insulation. We've also amplified several energy saving and heat pump webinars that have been happening across the community in recent months, and they've all been very well attended, another indicator of the interest and appetite for home retrofits. Retrofits also keep money in the pockets of homeowners in Hamilton, especially as the cost of fossil gas, or natural gas as it's often branded, especially as those costs are on a trajectory to increase. The Better Homes Hamilton program, development by the Center for Climate Change Management, calculated that home retrofit participants could save up to $1,800 between now and 2030 when it comes to reducing their use of fossil gas for heating. Also noting that under the federal government's emissions reductions plan, carbon pollution pricing, which is currently at $65 per ton, will go up to $170 per ton by the year 2030. And as you just heard from the previous delegate, retrofits are good for green jobs, supporting small businesses in Hamilton. We support the city's efforts to incentivize and have homeowners across Hamilton undertake upgrades, which can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, while improving home energy efficiency, thermal comfort, and air quality of their home. The recommendations before you today will help reduce the city's direct contribution to climate change. If there are data insights from the incubation stage before formally wrapping up, we would encourage the city to launch a wider reaching retrofit program before 2025 so that more work can be done to lower emissions sooner. We encourage the city to move forward with the urgency and launch of the Better Homes Hamilton Incubator program to support residential retrofits. Thank you for your time and continued efforts to reduce Hamilton's emissions.
Thank you, Zoe, and I see no one on the speakers list, so thank you for your presentation. And I need a mover and a seconder, Councillor Francis and Mayor Horvath, thank you. And it passes 14-0. We will now hear from all the delegates wishing to speak to items 8.3, Hamilton Region Decarbonization Hub. We will take one vote at the end of to receive all the delegates on this matter. First one is, second time, Ian Borsak, in person. Thank you, and you know the routine, 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, Council. Long time no see.
Welcome back.
So for anyone who might have forgotten, my name is Ian Borsak. I'm the Interim Executive Director in Environment Hamilton. And today before you is an interesting proposal for the Decarbonization Hub and some additional information that I think is extremely helpful in wrapping my head around what is exactly being proposed. So to begin with, absolutely, industry and industrial emissions need to be addressed by the City of Hamilton. And it was at Environment Hamilton's insistence that addressing industrial emissions was part of the CEP, or the Recharge Hamilton plan, and we are very happy to see it in there. However, it is worth flagging that the whole idea of a decarbonization hub is very new. This pitch, which I believe is coming from the Transition Accelerator, is a very new charitable organization based out of Calgary, and so far their only track record is with the Edmonton Hydrogen Hub. While I fully recognize and appreciate why we're not getting a hydrogen hub proposed here, but rather a decarbonization hub, I think looking through the Appendix B for the report that's before you today, it's quite clear that there's some vagaries and not quite explicit outcomes that will be happening from this program quite yet. Within the governance model that in that Appendix B, the leadership team, which would be sort of the top tier part of that governance model, was flagged as required. Looking at what's in that report and the somewhat vague specific outcomes that are highlighted at the end of that report, I think that that leadership team is going to be absolutely necessary. While I fully appreciate and I ultimately value that the City of Hamilton is being asked to contribute a fairly small portion of what will ultimately be a over $3 million budget for this hub, we are looking for, ultimately hiring 6 individual staffers that will be employed by that Transition Accelerator, and they will be reporting to the City of Hamilton. I appreciate that provincial officials will be appointed to the Decarbonization Hub leadership team, but I don't think any of you would be too surprised to hear that I would feel a lot better if there was some strong representation by Hamilton City Council and Hamilton staff on that leadership team, ensuring that the outcomes are actually tangible and can be communicated to the public in a tangible way. Reading through that report right now, there's a lot of talk about finding efficiencies, helping with supply chains, but there's not really any actual tangible outcomes that can be pointed to that will be accomplished after those 4 years. And while it's absolutely vital that the federal government step up and contribute these funds to help us address industrial emissions, I think there's a lot more work that can go into this program to ensure that the public has a full understanding of what's actually being proposed. On the delegation, on the written correspondence, I think that from Kate Flynn from Mohawk College, there was a variety of suggestions in that correspondence that were very positive. And ultimately, we as Environment Hamilton on the outside really want to see actual industrial emissions go down. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to also recognize this is happening within the context of talking about decarbonization, but not demethanization. So if we're going to be focusing purely on low carbon fuels, we are going to be ignoring the other greenhouse gas emissions that arise from burning of natural gas, which in the case of methane, in the short term can be worse than carbon. So we need to have a nice holistic view of this. There needs to be more public engagement and public consultation on this. And we need to be hiring local talent who will work locally for the City of Hamilton in addressing these concerns. And so ultimately, I hope that the City of Hamilton will pursue with this program, but we'll continue to ensure that there's proper oversight, that there's proper targets and timelines associated with those targets, and that the outcomes of this project, which again is going to be quite considerable, are in fact tangible and measurable by the City of Hamilton, that we can say that this is reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our industrial sector. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you very much. And I see we have no councillor also on the list. So, it's not listed yet. So Councillor Ray Wilson, please.
Just a quick question, Ian, making sure I understand this is a really big opportunity for us, but we want to make sure it gets it right. You're looking at the leadership team, you're looking at some of these things and making sure that the work and the investment we're giving, understanding it's a relative comparative investment to other partners, we're still meeting our goals. It's not a make work project, it's not a branding exercise, but we're actually getting these outcomes out of it as well, and recommending some stronger leadership from Hamilton staff on the leadership table to make that happen. That's the ask.
Or again, that Appendix B is quite vague in a number of cases, so it says municipal official. I think it would be entirely appropriate for a representative for Hamilton City Council to be on that leadership team to hold this to account. I'm personally not aware of how this actual proposal came about. I'm not sure if it was the city went to the Transition Accelerator or the Transition Accelerator came to us. But I think, just looking at the amount of money that's going to be going into this, recognizing that this is an untested model that we're going to be pursuing, that we as the City of Hamilton, if we're going to be called the Hamilton Decarbonization Hub, that actual decarbonization and GHG reductions are in fact happening. And I think really ensuring that, the City of Hamilton's fully involved, dictating what's going on there, and ultimately reporting back on what the outcomes are, is going to be extremely important.
Thank you.
And thank you. Councillor Taddison, please.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for your delegation today. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk to us about, you said, and tell me if I'm reading this right, we're working towards a decarbonization hub as opposed to a hydrogen hub. Would you prefer a hydrogen hub? And can you speak further into that, please?
No, I think the identification of not focusing purely on hydrogen was appropriate. I think limiting ourselves in that way, looking at where emissions are coming from, not just from the steel sector, but from elsewhere in the industrial sector. I think that was a very appropriate decision to not just focus on hydrogen in Hamilton, but a larger issue across the entire industrial sector.
Kudos to Director Cyrus for getting us on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I pass the chair to Councillor Clark, please?
Yes, you may.
I heard, and I was doing something else, that the cost for the office is $3 million. Did I hear right? And would it be from the province or the city?
Not having it in front of me, but the Appendix A to the report lays out the, quite transparently, I think, the actual finances for that proposal. If I remember correctly, it's $60,000 per year from the City of Hamilton, which I think is fairly reasonable. The bulk of those funds would come from the federal government, which haven't been fully confirmed. And then if I remember correctly, there's a variety of other funding sources, not from the City of Hamilton, including the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce and a few other local organizations, but also some foundations as well, if I recall correctly. But don't take my word for that.
Thank you for that, because we need help from the federal, from the province. We cannot do this on our own. So when I hear 3 million, 10 million, and the taxpayers think, where's the money coming from? So it's good to know that we are engaging with federal, province, and the city is part of it. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. And I'll find them. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Ian, for coming. And we'll move on. We have Jeffrey Cowan, from Hamilton Community Enterprises, and it's pre-recorded. Let's unmute. Can we put it louder? Yeah. You want us to move on with the other one? Okay, we're going to go to David Carson, Carson, Hamilton 350 first, and then we'll see Jeffrey call and we can increase the volume. Yeah. Thank you for showing how to look into it. So the public know we're checking the volume for one of our delegates, so there's a little lull here. We should have music or something.
It's the largest GHG emitter in Canada, apart from 5 Western councillors. Good morning, Mayor and councillors. My name is Dave Carson. I live in Dundas, and some of you know I've been pressing for climate action in Hamilton for many years. Thank you for hearing me today on the Decarbonisation Hub. I've read the staff report with great interest and want to press you on the most significant area of action that the hub can take. The action is furthering ArcelorMittal Dofasco's emissions reduction plan by moving it from gas to hydrogen. The presentation in the agenda package provides this context, showing how industry is the largest GHG emitter in Hamilton. I'd like to add further context. ArcelorMittal Dofasco is the largest GHG emitter in Canada, apart from 5 Western oil sands facilities and 4 shortly to be decommissioned coal generating stations. AMD represents 65% of total Hamilton industrial emissions. So decarbonising AMD is job one for Hamilton and Ontario and Canada. We need steel, so we need to decarbonise the process. I'm sure all of you are aware of the federal and provincial contributions to AMD's $1.8 billion Green Steel plan. Press releases around these contributions have stated they'll result in a 55 to 60% GHG reduction from operations by 2028. This plan involves eliminating blast furnaces using a process called direct reduced iron, fed by a new gas pipeline across Hamilton, which will double AMD's gas consumption. That still leaves 40% or 1.8 million tonnes of annual CO2 emissions, leaving AMD still in the top 3 emitters in Ontario. And we have serious concerns that the stated emission reduction does not take into account the methane leakage from the largely Pennsylvania fracked gas that will be the source for AMD. But there could be a better plan, indeed a great plan. Elsewhere in Sweden, Spain and other places, truly green steel is in the final stages of implementation using hydrogen rather than natural gas as a feedstock, including by ArcelorMittal, by the way. AMD could go directly to green steel produced by green hydrogen in the same timeline as they propose to do using gas. This would lead to making Hamilton North America's first truly green steel producer. But AMD have not stated any plan to switch to hydrogen, and there's great concern that once a new gas pipeline is in place, business leaders will require a return on investment spanning 20 years or more. And to be sure there's no confusion about this pipeline, in our questioning of the Enbridge VP involved, he asserted that the pipeline could not, at some future time, be used for hydrogen. Yet hydrogen is the key to truly green steel, and that is what the Decarbonisation Hub should treat as a priority. This then is our recommendation. Make the establishment of a hydrogen action team the top priority of the Decarbonisation Hub. No single project can have greater impact than eliminating AMD's emissions. and no single project like an Enbridge gas pipeline to Dofasco can have a greater negative impact on Hamilton's emissions. The staff report lays out a governance structure that engages political and senior stakeholder support. This will be vital. It also shows the $3 million over 4 years investment in funding 7 staff, which, as I understand, is more than our own Office of Climate Change initiatives. So we should demand a lot from them. To get to change, we'll need a powerful action team, and given the impact that this can make on Hamilton emissions, on Hamilton jobs, on Hamilton's economy from a single source of emissions, it should be the focus of the decarbonisation hub. And the final point, the hub report indicates an investment of $3 million over 4 years. We should congratulate the Transition Accelerator and all the funders for bringing this investment forward. When the hub is initiated, it must come with a clear statement of what will be delivered, transparency on work performed, and a rigorous schedule of reporting to the stakeholders and governance organizations. Then perhaps we can truly decarbonize. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to now, that was Mr. Carson. We're going to go back to Mr. Cowan now.
Hello there, I'm Jeff Cowan, President and CEO of Hamilton Community Enterprises, a municipally owned leader in the low carbon building heating and smart telecommunication solutions. We're known as HCE and contribute daily to our city's vision to be the best place to raise a child and age successfully. On behalf of our board of directors, customers, partners, and team, I wish to express full support for the Hamilton Region Decarbonization Hub. In particular, we congratulate those who worked tirelessly to raise awareness and funds needed to launch this valuable community initiative. City staff from multiple departments partnered effectively with the Transition Accelerator and others to build a sturdy foundation and bold action plan. We applaud their successful efforts. Similar to many others, we see the Decarbonization Hub as an inclusive platform to align stakeholders and achieve the twin goals of economic development and emission reductions. We also see the hub as a catalyst for social innovation needed to ensure that everyone in our community benefits from the transition to a net zero carbon economy. Most important, we view the hub as a powerful collaboration tool to get things done for the public good. This means working together to create a Hamilton-based approach to solving the complex challenges of decarbonization. And it means unlocking investable opportunities to reduce the GHG footprint of industry, transportation, and buildings. It's the spirit of collaboration coupled with clear-eyed goals that drove HCE to join in making a 4-year funding commitment to the hub. We're confident that this investment will lead to tangible outcomes for our community. HCE will join the Hamilton Decarbonization Hub at an exciting moment in our own organization's evolution. More than ever, HCE is committed to being leaders in high-efficiency, low-carbon building heating. This push to decarbonize building heating is essential to achieve sustainability targets set by the City of Hamilton. And that's why it's important to support the Decarbonization Hub and others in accelerating the community-wide adoption of proven solutions like geothermal, solar thermal, heat pumps, smart control systems, and radiant floor heating. HCE's investments in driving low-carbon building heating now means going beyond large-scale district energy systems to also include smaller-scale solutions that enable individual buildings and clusters of buildings to gain efficiencies and lower their GHG emissions. We think our expanded set of offerings comes at an ideal time as Hamilton experiences an unprecedented growth in development projects and renewal initiatives citywide. An overarching feature of HCE's decarbonization strategy is helping organizations recover and reuse valuable thermal energy. We call it energy harvesting. The aim is to change the current paradigm where more than 60% of energy in Canada is wasted. One example of energy harvesting is a project we're leading in collaboration with business, industry, and the development community. We are studying the viability of harvesting residual thermal energy from Hamilton's Bayfront industrial area as a low carbon source of heating for all types of buildings, new and old. The intent is to use these findings from this study to kickstart the development of Canada's thermal corridor, an example of green energy infrastructure with the promise of heating more than 80 million square feet of building space. HCE is delighted to see the practice of energy harvesting enabled by the public-private sector partnerships cited by the Decarbonization Hub to show what's possible through teamwork. HCE views the Decarbonization Hub as a way to integrate many positive initiatives in Hamilton that are creating viable pathways to net zero, pathways that work for all and demonstrate Hamilton's leadership in building the climate-positive economy of tomorrow. As a founding member of the Decarbonization Hub team, HCE looks forward to getting to work on behalf of our community. Thank you.
And thank you. And now I need a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation. Councillor Matt Francis, Councillor Clark, and will Evo, please. And it carries 15-0. Colleagues, it is 10 to 12. I saw lunch coming in, and I noticed that 8 is the staff presentation on our city survey, and I think might take some time. So would you like to have a break, our lunch, and then we'll get back by 12:30, gives you 40 minutes, and then we'll come back. Is everybody okay? Let's vote, if that's what you want. Yes, you'll move it, Councillor Kretsch and Councillor Taddison, till 12:30. Thank you, and we'll see you at 12:30, and thank you.
That vote carries 15-0.
Yes.